Within the past 24 hours, we've had a leak and confirmation of multiple different Pokemon that are recently, or at least soon to be, coming out in Pokemon Sun and Moon. It's not unconventional for such things to happen. Obviously, Korokoro is famous for leaks, as we don't really get confirmations on things from that necessarily so quickly as Japan would, and we still to have current Pokemon that were shown in the past 24 hours to be confirmed here in English-speaking or indeed other European-speaking countries. Now, the thing that's got me at least in a little bit of contention is the concept of Grubbin. And Grubbin is a bug Pokemon, and bugs are my favourite type, without a doubt. They are fantastic. But something that I've always admired about bug Pokemon is that the formula for them has been always so different, and I mean that. Sometimes there's always sometimes there's an example of how they evolve and how they evolve from a very low level, so they're useful as like early Pokemon, so that you can get them at like level 3, level them up to level 12, you have a fully evolved Pokemon on your side of the team, and you just smash everybody because you've got a fully evolved Pokemon with all the additional stats to boot. But without getting too specific, Grubbin is peculiar, because we seem to have been given this straightforward line of its weird evolution line between Grubbin, this battery Pokemon, and then Vikavolt is its name? I'm not sure. It's all so new to me. They're all a bit up in arms. But I want to take a second to discuss whether or not Grubbin is actually going to evolve into Vikavolt all the time. And I'm going to do this with some demonstrations from previous generations, so please just bear with me on that one. Because I know for a fact that there was a lot of speculation about it becoming a bug electric type anyway from its Pokedex entry that we've had, but that doesn't necessarily mean everything. So I want you to keep an open mind as I go forward and try and just explain a few things that have happened, to possibly suggest there's another line for Grubbin, or something else is at work entirely. Now, first generation, there isn't really a precedent to be spoken of, because it was the first time, and that was setting the precedent itself. So we had the introduction primarily of Caterpie and of Weedle. And now of these two bug Pokemon, they evolved along a very similar line with the same levels, in the same sort of vein as Star Pokemon would, except they weren't version exclusive. They were just Pokemon you could pick up, level, and get a strong Pokemon pretty early. Of course, talking about Butterfree and Beedrill respectively. Now, they had probably the most archetypal evolution line you could possibly think of in Pokemon. It probably embodies evolution in general in the best way the game could ever hope to achieve, and that is you start out with a larva or larvae, and then it turns into a cocoon, and then it blossoms into a final evolution that's a big bad bug. And that was an interesting way to start it out. Like I said, it's very atypical of Pokemon, a very straightforward idea that they wanted to put across, and it did encapsulate a lot of Pokemon that had 3-stage evolutions. Now, Generation 2 saw a bit of a weird mix-up for the rest of the series. Normally there's like a bug line introduced that sort of stands out among the rest, but in Generation 2 they just went with like Spinarak and Pineco, and kind of Shuckle, I guess, and it's just weird additions, not necessarily setting any precedents, I'm not Australian, setting any precedents or changing any of the formula in any significant way. But there was the introduction of trading with held items in Generation 2, so we did see the evolution of Scyther into Scizor, and of course Pineco into Fortress. So there was that little change that I think was an adjustment to the formula that they already set up, as to cast aside what bug Pokemon were. Obviously we had Pinsir and Scyther from the first generation that didn't have evolutions, as we had Yanma in the second, but then Scyther got given Scizor, and the rest is really history. But Generation 3, we saw Wurmple. We also saw a couple of other bug Pokemon, but Wurmple to me is probably the most norm changing, because it was one Pokemon, it was a root Pokemon that could become one of 2 cocoon stages, and then one of an additional 2 of the final big bad bugs. And that was odd, because it was the same Pokemon in the same way that Tyrogue could evolve into, Hitmonchan or Hitmonlee, except that the process for evolving was a bit more obscure, because it was effectively random, because you couldn't check the value that they'd assigned to it to say yes, it's a Silcoon or a Cascoon. You just had to be given whichever one was there to eventually get a Beautifly or a Dustox, and it was just a bit odd, really, if you ask me. But addition to that, there was also And Nincada was a brand new typing for bug Pokemon, and I still think it's unique. And we also had that evolution of having a spare space in your party to get both Ninjask and Shedinja, which was odd and never really been done since, but also very interesting, and again, very, very different. Now, if you can't see where I'm going, it's that they always change Bug Pokemon, and I can't really think of an occasion, other than maybe second generation, if you want to be super stipulant about it, where this isn't the case. And again, this is further proved by Burmy from 4th gen. Obviously, Burmy had multiple conditions for what it'd evolve into, because you'd have to level it up in a certain... No, you have to battle with it in a certain place, then level it up so that it could evolve into a specific Wormadam, but only if it was a female, because if it was a male, it would always be a Mothin, which is ridiculous. They've effectively made only 3 Pokemon there, but at the same time, there's 3 different types from one end, and then just one static one from a specific gender, and it's odd, very, very odd. Again, Generation 5, there wasn't much of a big change, except, in some of the little details. I think most for 5th gen, we had a radical change in sort of types that were given to bugs. The sort of most adventurous we'd seen was Bug Poison, and, and Bug Flying, but we did get Bug Steel, I guess. But to get something like Bug Fire in Volcarona is incredible. And of course, that's one of the huge departures from the norm for me, in that Volcarona evolves from Larvesta at a huge level, really, really late, which goes against the grain of what Bug Pokemon are, which is fascinating, interesting, and came through really, really well as a Pokemon to be respected, and is still really, really good. Additionally, of course, we also got other unconventional means to evolve things in Generation 5, mostly from Carablast. Because obviously you could trade Carablast with, was it Shelmet or something, and then you'd get like Excalibur and other Pokemon, and that was weird. But that quick run of history brings us to Generation 6, and again to the topic of Grubbin. We know that they've confirmed Grubbin will be a thing, it was shown at E3, and we know that it's going to exist, but we never got any real mention of what it's going to be like. And now we've had these leaks, we've seen 2 Pokemon that look to evolve from it. And again, Pokédex entry and sort of the designs carry over, except that to me the cocoon form, the battery thing that I don't know the name of, is incredibly contrasting in its design to Grubbin as standard. The only things that really carry over is sort of the dots along the side and sort of little pointy mouth at the front, but beyond that the colours don't come across. I don't think the design is very well presented, and although I could see Grubbin going to Vikavolt, I couldn't see it going into the Charger, whatever, which is weird. So, for everybody who's out there just dismissing everybody else who's assuming that Grubbin has some sort of additional condition or subject to come out of the other side of an evolution for it, I want you to keep your mind open, please, because I don't know if something else could happen from it. Because we've seen things like 6th gen, which I would neglected to mention for some reason, with Scatterbug evolving into Spupa and then into Vivillon, which is a pretty conventional evolution method, but Vivillon had so many different forms that it was completely new in its, it's effectively like a Spindar, but it had an evolution line, which is ridiculous. But still, Grubbin hasn't got that feature yet. And for it to be the mainline bug Pokemon along the lines of Caterpie or Weedle or Wurmple or Burmy or anyone else that's really fitting that bill, it's got to have something radical changing to it. And I'm not sure what that is just yet. Perhaps it's a hold item, perhaps it's some way to change the outcome of the Pokemon. Obviously, it says in this Pokédex entry, which I've mentioned twice already, that the Pokemon really likes electricity, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be an electric type. We've seen in the past, obviously, some electric Pokemon are just to do with magnetism, and the magnetism itself, best presented by Magneton, Magnemite, and Magnezone, is that they are also partly steel. And it mentions somewhere along the Pokédex entry as well, just trying to remember, trying to recall from memory, that it was something to do with nuclear power plants more than necessarily standard ones. So we could see really odd choices for a pure bug Pokemon to go to Bug Electric and then Bug Electric. We could see a bug Pokemon go to Bug Steel, or something else entirely. But, there's nothing saying that Grubbin isn't a version exclusive, there's nothing saying that the evolution has to be specifically in one way, and there's a lot that could go differently, at least in my eyes. for the likes of Grubbin and its evolutionary line or lines. So that's about it. That's a weird ranty rant from a Bug Pokemon fan. As you can tell, I didn't really prepare anything for this, but if you enjoyed this rant, obviously let me know. If you have any, anything productive to contribute to the discussion, please do, because I'm a little bit lost, but I'm still very interested in what else they could try and come up with for Generation 7. And of course, I'm very excited. So until next time, or until the game is out as well, thank you very much for joining me, and I hope to see you running around in not Hawaii. Okay, bye for now.